Hello and welcome everybody to another WCU Alumni Speaker Series. I'm Professor Moser in the Department of Languages and Culture, specifically the German program. That is what I teach. And I'm really delighted to welcome back to WCU one of our graduates, Adelaide Okonski. So welcome back.
Hi, thank you. It's so crazy to be here.
And I'm delighted that you're joining us and will share all the things that you've done since you've been here. So let's go ahead. And my first question for you is perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what your major was and how you chose that, majors actually.
Yeah, for sure. I had two majors at Westchester. One, I initially went into Westchester as a history major, and then I added German languages and cultures I want to say second semester at Westchester. Um, for the history major in particular, I initially went into Westchester thinking that I wanted to be a history teacher. I loved history as a subject. It meant a lot to me. And I thought that I could see applications of it down the road of understanding the past and how to implement the past to the present times. And then for German, so I started taking German as a language in eighth grade when I was in grade school. And then when you take uh, when you take a humanities major at Westchester, so when I took history, I was required to take at least four classes of German. And when I started taking those classes, I really started to enjoy it and enjoy the opportunities that came along with it, right? I would say that a major thing was the Vienna trip for sure. Um, and then it just made sense at that point. It was four classes that I needed to take, but and then six more to be a major. I just thought, might as well.
I remember that. I remember that decision-finding process. Actually, a really interesting question when you look at it back now. Did you think you'd be where you are today when you were a student?
No, I definitely didn't.
Yeah.
I I don't know that I necessarily knew exactly what I wanted to do when I graduated. I had like some idea, right? I had some idea. I thought maybe I wanted to work in a museum, and that was kind of the base thought process of where I was. But I think if we went back to me in freshman year and said, "Hey, by the way, you're going to work for an investment company," I would think you were nuts. I would feel that there is no way. That is not where I'm headed. That like it doesn't necessarily make sense with the trajectory that I'm studying, at least from like an initial glance. Um, but I would think it was cool. I think the opportunities that I've got both from Westchester and then my current employment at Vanguard um, has been worth it. And, I wouldn't change anything necessarily looking back.
Good. So what parts of your WCU education do you find yourself coming back to most frequently, either personally or even professionally?
Um, Such a great question. I would say one thing is really the growth and the desire to learn at Westchester and kind of a curious mindset that started at Westchester, which I think I can also tie into, you know, even like searching out that second major is that the things that I was focusing on was because I was interested in finding out more about various different aspects of life in the world around me. Um, I think I think the things that I come back to the most, um, writing for sure, both from a history and a German major perspective, because I will say that writing an essay in a foreign language certainly makes writing anything in English really puts it into perspective that writing things in English are a lot easier. Um, but those combinations have also um, helped me in other ways too. So, for example, one thing with the German major is that I really got exposure um, to a culture or to norms that were outside of my own. And I enjoyed it so much that I continue to seek that out. So from a kind of, profound perspective, German really encouraged me to seek out those new opportunities, and to uh, appreciate what was going on around me. And when speaking with other people, to think about what their background is and what impact their background may have on them as a person. Um, from a slightly more trivial perspective, I initially started in at Vanguard, on the phones. And one of the things that I found a real benefit with having taken German was my ability to pronounce people's last names, right off the bat. And you can really build like a certain sense of trust with someone when you initially get the pronunciation of their name right. So that was a more trivial thing that I also found that I used.
It's amazing. So that really helped you as well. So so let's talk also about some of the, struggles that you may have had along the way, about your perhaps the job hunt, to how you got there, or having any kind of self-doubt, or if that even happened, or because I think that would be reassuring for our listeners, to see how you got to where you got to at the WCU.
For sure. So there was definitely self doubt, for sure. Uh, I think if you can get through life with no self doubt, that's a little crazy. I think that's kind of just a natural way of being. So my post college journey, I graduated in December of 2018. Which makes it almost 6 years since I've graduated, which is crazy. Um, and I graduated, and the day after I graduated, I started work. And I initially started working when I graduated. I was just kind of looking for a full-time job as like a quick thing to keep me busy until I found the quote unquote real job. And so I started working at AC Moore, um, which has since gone out of business. So, maybe dodged a little bit of a bullet there. But I started working at AC Moore, and I started working the day after college. And something that people don't necessarily talk about, I think, when graduating college is, it's this huge life event and it's this huge milestone. And there are a lot of emotions that are attached to graduating college that you need to process. And I think in terms of that, I would have given myself more of a break to be able to process the experience of no longer being in school. Um, and I wish that more people talked about that the transition period from leaving college to then going into the workforce, um, is one that can be navigated for sure, but it is one that takes some emotional tenacity to get through. So that was kind of the initial process directly out of college and going into it. And then from there, I was working at AC Moore. I was working full time technically, but it was, I mean, it was a cashier job essentially, which is what I had been doing before college. Um, and I think it helps with people skills, but it was not it was not where I wanted to end up. It was not the career necessarily that I wanted to get into. So I was working there, and uh my old neighbor who used to live next door to me when I, in my childhood home, um, told me that Vanguard was hiring through a contracting agency. They were hiring for representatives to take phone calls, and it was a good way to initially get your foot in the door. Um, and again, the opportunity came up, and I heard about it, and I was like, well, this wasn't really where I was headed, but like, it does pay more. So like maybe I'll start there, and it's a great company to have on the resume, and I'll start there, and we'll see where it goes from there. So then um I started at the job, and I remember the first day when we went there and they started talking about what Vanguard stood for and how it was different from other investment companies. A little bit of background. Vanguard is owned by the mutual funds, which are owned by our clients. So therefore, our clients directly own Vanguard. And that spoke to me as a very people-centric company. And I really kind of discovered that the things that I wanted to do in life were more about focusing directly on people and their experiences and how to improve the experiences that they are having. So 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 then I was on the phones with Vanguard, and I started initially as a contractor. And then once, about 9 months into my contractor role, I was offered a full-time position. Was very exciting, to finally be directly employed with Vanguard. Very big deal. I had to take my FINRA licensing exams. So that's the SIE, the Series 7, and the Series 63. Um, that was kind of another hard point in my career because again, it is an experience. It is something that it is a licensing exam in a career path that I had only joined 9 months ago. And it's kind of the niche things that come along with investing. So took my SIE, that was fine. Took my Series 7 and I failed it. And then took my Series 63 and I passed that. So I got one more chance on the Series 7. And it was kind of one of those intimidating job moments where it's like you pass or you aren't employed here anymore, kind of a thing. So that was very stressful. And so I think a bit of advice that I would have from that is um, don't underestimate the amount of stress that something like that can have and the impact that that can have on your life and like what that will do to your mental health at that time. So if you're going through a process that is complicated like that, make sure that you're taking time for yourself to regroup and to acknowledge that, hey, like what I am doing is hard, but once I get to where I'm trying to go, then I will be there. So that might have been a little bit of a long answer, but like that was some of the struggles that I kind of went through getting to where I am today, at least initially going into like the workforce.
That's amazing. And how, so then you passed these exams and you became, employed directly by the company. And so how did that then continue? How did your career path in Vanguard evolve then?
Yeah, so when I got fully licensed, I went into what is essentially our account maintenance departments. I was still on the phones. And then from the account maintenance department, I went into a group called onboarding, where essentially I was assisting clients with opening new accounts and transferring their accounts into Vanguard. So I was there for about 2 years, and I learned a lot there in in the systems that Vanguard has and the ways to kind of work with people and to talk them through bringing their finances over, why they should bring their finances over, and being kind of like the first point for a lot of people when coming into Vanguard. So that was really good because I feel like my people skills really improved, and I feel like I could have a conversation with anyone. um, and I learned a lot there. I really thrived in that, again, that like client facing role and talking directly with people. That it came very naturally to me. So that was kind of a quote unquote easy role in my career. So from there, um, I was in that onboarding group for about, I want to say like 18 months, maybe 2 years total. And then from there, I interviewed for a leadership position, and this is another kind of struggle of my career so far. When I started at Vanguard, my goal was to get to be a team leader. Like that was the the light on the horizon. Like whatever I did, that it was to get to that point. And so I started interviewing in, I want to say like September, October of 2021-ish for that interview. And I had not nearly as many interviews as some of my peers had. So that's another little aside, is that if you have to interview a lot to get the role that you want, it's not a bad thing. You're just going to learn new things when you're going through those interviews. But I get the position in November of 2021, and I get there and I'm just like, I've achieved this, grand thing that's been on the horizon and been what I've been working for, XYZ number of years. And suddenly I'm here and it's a little bit of now what? Um, and dealing with the now what was a little bit of a struggle for me, and something that I really had to work towards kind of overcoming, to be perfectly honest. So I'm still in that team lead position at Vanguard. I've been in it for 3 years because I am still working on overcoming the now what. I'm a little hesitant to look forward to the next position because I don't want to get in the same boat that I was in. So there's a little bit of balancing that has to happen, in that career pathing. But from that, I would say the biggest thing I learned was, take that time for yourself. It is really very important, and focus on the things that you need at times like that. And also, I am very fortunate to work for a company that it's not, sometimes with investment companies or any kind of company, you get the company that's like, put your nose to the grindstone and you're just going to crank out 70 hours and you're going to deal with it and it's going to be fine. I have never once in my life gone to take a day off from Vanguard where I work and have someone have an issue with it. They're like, great, have fun, send us pictures, see you later. Um, and I think that's a huge thing to focus on when looking for a role or something like that, is if you anticipate needing a break, and most people should, look for a company that's going to encourage putting yourself forward first.
So when you went from interfacing with customers to a team leader, did that change how you organized your day in terms of communicating? Going from being on the phone to being a team leader, was that a transition for you, or?
Yeah, that it was huge, because so when you're on the phones, you have a schedule that you have to follow, and then when you're a leader, you have your own schedule. I mean, you go from being required to, come in at this time, leave at this time, take your lunch at this time, to being like, you can stay here for as long as you want, as long as you get your work done, take whatever you need and that was a little bit of a mental shift. Um, and I think one thing that could be helpful to kind of like start doing in college is really starting to understand, um, time boxing, and how you don't even necessarily have to perfect your time boxing in college, but you do have to understand your relationship with it. If it comes to you naturally, if it's something that you like to do, if look at a list of things and you get overwhelmed, start to understand your reaction to having a to-do list, having a schedule, because then you're going to know in your um, in your corporate quote unquote life after college, what you need to be aware of when you're going into the corporate world, because you're going to have leaders and things like that where you can come up to them and you can be like, hey, here's where here's what I'm really good at and here's what I'm not so good at. So how do we get me better at what I'm not so good at? So time boxing was one of those things for me that I felt, okay with, but it was definitely a relationship that I had to kind of work out.
Really very interesting to hear. Let's go back to the beginning of you starting at WCU, and so why did you decide to come to WCU, and describe your time here, and it might also be interesting to recommend to listeners to do, how to make the most of your college time, you know.
Okay. So we'll start out with why I chose WCU. And I'm laughing because there were three colleges that I was initially looking at. Again, I was thinking that I was going to be a teacher. So there were three colleges that I was initially looking at. And so it was Westchester, Shippensburg, and Bloomsburg. And again, purely from like a teaching perspective. And Westchester was my last choice. Um, my parents wanted me to go to Westchester, and I know they're watching, so I know that they're gonna laugh at that. And I was like, I'm not gonna go to Westchester. That's too close. It's too close to home. Um, and I remember uh coming to visit Westchester one day, and it was, it was rainy, and it was, I don't know, it was a Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning. So obviously college students are not out on a Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning most of the time. And if they are, they don't look terribly happy about it. But um, and I just remember being like, this is not the school for me. This is not the option. And then um, I got accepted, and I decided to go to accepted students day. And at the time, again, I was accepted as a history major, and they did this real genius thing where they brought the history majors into Phillips Autograph Library, which is beautiful and gorgeous and has all of these really beautiful books and things like that. And I remember walking in and thinking, like, this is what I imagined college to be, right? Is, there was like surrounded by books and stuff like that. Um, and I remember going to talk to a history professor, and they were just so nice and so respectful of people's interest in history. Um, I got accepted into the other two schools as well. But I just liked the way that Westchester was, the way it kind of was, um, the way the professors were, the way that people interacted. I remember being at Shippensburg and them saying, hey, we have the best digital archive of all of the public Pennsylvania school systems. And then they went, except Westchester. And I was like, oh, well, okay. So then obviously, and so that's a little bit about why I chose it. Um, Other smaller things were also that they had like the club sport. So I played water polo in high school. They had the club sport that I wanted to play. So that was a benefit. Um, Again, in the state of Pennsylvania, I did want to go to a Pennsylvania state school. I'm from Pennsylvania, born and raised. And just seemed, again, like they had a lot of opportunities. So that's kind of why I picked. Okay, so there were three parts to that question. What was the second part of the question?
Um, what would you recommend to listeners to make the most of their time in college and their college careers?
Um, Okay. Well, so one thing that I wish that I had done more of is that I wish that I had taken a wider variety of classes with more professors. And this is more specifically from a history major perspective. It was fantastic to be in all of your classes, and I wouldn't have changed that. But from a history perspective, you go to a class and you really enjoy the professor, and you say, well, I'm going to take this professor six more times because I enjoyed them so much. Um, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this without sounding shady. And I don't intend it to sound shady. And if any of my old professors are listening to this, I'm so sorry. But sometimes they because you are searching something out that is a similar topic, they're going to repeat the same things that they've already talked about in previous classes. Go figure, right? Since, history tends to be a little bit linear. Um, uh, and I wish that I had seeked out more perspectives from history. And I wish that I had gone to different classes and searched for things that I wasn't necessarily directly interested in to give me a wider variety of understanding. Um, and then in terms of making the most of your time at Westchester, I can definitely talk about how I made the most of my time at Westchester with the understanding that not everybody is going to want to have this mentality. Um, you could take, or at the time that I was able to go there, you could take 6 classes a semester without having to pay anything additional. So I just maxed out those 6 classes and I did that every semester. That's what led me to be able to get 2 majors. And that is what led me to be able to graduate a semester early. Now, there was also a couple of internships and study abroads and things like that that also built in to that graduating early, but the 2 majors was definitely a 6 classes a semester thing. So if that's something that you're interested in, it's very doable when you have intersecting majors kind of in the way that I did, right? 2 humanities majors made things a little bit easier. Um, so it's very possible to do. Um, it's just if you are interested in doing that and graduating on time, you kind of have to make that decision a little bit more early. And don't be afraid to also like declare an extra major and then decide later down the road that maybe it's like not for you. There's no harm in doing that. I think technically at some point, I think for maybe 24 hours. I had an international business minor. And then I was like, this isn't actually going to work out with my schedule. And I ended up dropping it. But, it just like, don't be afraid of taking classes and things like that.
But actually, you just brought up some interesting things. You brought up study abroad, you brought up the internship.
Yes.
And so I'd love to hear more about that. I think our listeners would like to hear about study abroad internship, but also if there were any organizations or other projects or classes or memories that still stand out, please share. Love to hear about that.
Of course. Well, obviously, I have to start out with the study abroad that I went on with you. So that was my first study abroad experience. I went my, I don't know, for the summer between my freshman and my sophomore year. We'll say that and make it easy. And so that's the study abroad trip with the German department to Vienna, Austria. When I went there, so we were there for a month. Um, and we lived in a hostel, which was a wonderful, again, just a wonderful experience. And then went to classes at Actilingua University, specifically studying for Actilingua Academy, actually, I think it is, but specifically studying the German language. So I was able to get 2 classes worth of credit from that trip. Um, and yeah, what would you like me to go into specifically about the Vienna trip?
Whatever still stands out to you, whatever's memorable, whatever's memorable.
Okay, okay. Whatever's memorable and appropriate for the current moment, right? Is um oh my gosh, it was. Well, first off, I never thought that I would get so comfortable navigating. I'm not really a city person. I never thought that I would get so comfortable navigating a city kind of solo. Public transportation was amazing and really like changed my perspective on cities and getting around. Historically speaking, obviously the country is just full of opportunities and museums and these statues that are older than the United States and just this crazy array of new things to learn about. Really into horses, so I got to go and see the Vienna riding school, which was amazing. Um, and the trips that we did. Sometimes I can go to these places and not necessarily want to go out. So I appreciated these required trips almost to go out and see these things because I might not have seen them beforehand. I mean, Schönbrunn is beautiful. The Stephansdom is amazing. Um, Going to Salzburg was amazing from, us from Sound of Music all the way to just how beautiful, the surrounding mountains were. Um, and I think even being able to go from Austria, I think that we did um, Hungary and Bratislava which is Slovakia, when I was there. And that also, I think, it made me realize just how close together all the European countries were, which makes traveling plans much more interesting. And I think it again gave me a really good perspective that is outside of the United States, right? It expanded my bubble to the opportunities that I seek out now.
Yeah, that's wonderful, these memories. And then you mentioned an internship. So, but where did you do your internship, and how did that, you know, work out for you, and memories, etc.?
Yeah, so I actually did three internships because I'm an overachiever. Again, though, unfortunately, I really appreciated the internships and the experiences that I had 100%. I wish that I hadn't done three. I wish that I had seeked out maybe a different history class to learn some different perspectives. Anyway, the first one that I did was at Cliveden of the National Trust, which is in Germantown, Pennsylvania. It's a historic house in Germantown. And I essentially the role and the job that I had there was to research local street names to see how they were tied into the history of the house and the family that used to live there. And I got all kinds of experience in terms of appropriate maintenance of historic homes, um, kind of working with the public, understanding what has to be done with the running of a place like that. And that was great. And actually, they did offer me a summer job after the internship. So the year after the internship, I was a tour guide there. And I love that place, and I love they had like a battle, and so I got to work with reenactors and things like that. That was kind of like the quintessential like history experience that I thought that I was going to have when I graduated. And being able to experience that and have that bring me the amount of joy that it did has given me some insight into um, opportunities to seek out now with the free time. So like volunteer opportunities and stuff like that. So Cliveden was wonderful. From Cliveden, I went to the American Helicopter Museum, which is in Westchester, just down the street. Um, that was also an amazing experience. That one was a little bit more around uh, understanding, working on kind of a project for education there. It's a very I don't know that the museum is necessarily specifically focused, but I was focused in on like child education in that stratosphere. So it was learning about museum education and kind of the implementations that it had. And that was a very good experience. Um, I learned a lot in that role. I learned a lot about uh, uh, helicopters, which I didn't think would be something that I would learn about, but then also just with the creation of museum education. So that was very, very interesting. And then off of that, I had an opportunity to present a poster at a history conference, and that was really cool. And then um, the other internship was at, again, historic Sugartown, which is, funnily enough, like 5 minutes away from Vanguard. And there I worked on archiving and cataloging their collection of bookbinding tools. And again, building those relationships with people who I still keep in contact with and who are, able to give me professional references and things like that.
Well, that's really amazing. Free internships. And let's talk about other things you did. Like, are there any classes or projects specifically at university that we haven't talked yet about, or organizations that you were involved with? Anything that still stands out from Westchester?
Um, In terms of classes, I took it was the first year actually that this class had been kind of rolled out, and I took two. So there was a anthropology class where we prepared and then created a museum, um, which I think maybe they worked with y'all for like a Berlin Wall exhibit, maybe, possibly.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
be,
oh, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I was there the first year that they did that, and that was again learning about creation of museums and creating displays and things like that. That was a fantastic experience. And then let's see. I really enjoyed our German linguistics class. That was one of
Okay.
my Yes, that was one of my favorite classes because I think that it was um, really interesting to learn and um, it's helped. I've traveled to some other places since graduating, and I've been able to kind of navigate myself a little bit because of the understanding that I have of German. I know I was in Norway and I was able to navigate. You would have been so proud of me. Uh,
Wonderful.
but yeah, and I had a lot of fun in that linguistics
Yeah.
class too.
That's great to hear that the practical results. And I think we did briefly talk about Norwegian. Did we talk about brief? I don't know. I don't remember that. Anyway, um,
We might have. I definitely remember. Was it Yiddish that we talked
oh,
about?
definitely, definitely.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, I do remember the Yiddish for sure. I don't think if you asked me to speak any of it, I don't know that I would remember, but yeah.
That's wonderful. So do you have any advice for our current students? Anything, and this can be advice to current or advice to yourself from back then. I mean, anything that comes to your mind.
Um, Try not to think too much about the people that are saying that college goes by quick. They are right, but enjoy it, have fun. It's one of those experiences that I think you really enjoy, and then when it's time for it to be over, you are ready for it to be over. But think back on it with fond memories. At least that's been my experience. Um, and then I think that my I have two kind of main advice. One is to seek out those opportunities that maybe you wouldn't normally seek out, right? I mean, I talk about wishing to have done that with classes, but Vanguard, I wouldn't have, in a million years, I wouldn't have thought that this was going to be kind of my destination and where I kind of foresee myself going. Um, but seek out those opportunities because they can offer you things that you might be looking for. So for example, one of Vanguard's benefits is that they'll cover grad school. So I'm in grad school, right? I'm in grad school at Temple University for a master's in business administration. Um, and that's something, unfortunately, that you're probably not going to be able to get with something like a nonprofit or a museum or something like that. But a larger corporation does offer um, benefits like that. And, it's not to say necessarily that, I'm going to retire from Vanguard or that's where I'm going to be for the rest of my life, but it has set me up to be in an excellent position no matter if I do decide to retire there or if I pursue something else. Um, And then the other thing that I would say with school and as kind of advice is, um, pay attention to the way that you're feeling. I think that, you know, mental health, in my perspective, is very important, and being healthy mentally is going to help you, with the jobs that you have, the career that you decide, life in general. And so pay attention to the way that things are impacting you.
Good advice. Um, so one of the final questions, and it's actually a really big one, if you like. I'd like to here's some fun things that you've done. You already mentioned the trip to Norway, if you'd like to talk about that, or any other trips, but anything fun you've done, any kind of personal thing you'd like to share with us now that you're, what, like 6 years since graduation? We'd love to hear that.
Okay. Well, so it's funny that you ask about the trip to Norway because I just went in October, I want to say. So I went in October, and I actually went to visit friends that I met at Westchester. So these are two of my friends who we lived together after the year after I graduated from Westchester. They moved back to Norway, so they're from Norway originally. And I got to visit them at their new house. They had an open guest room, and I said, well, I'm ready to be a guest. So whenever you're ready to have me, and um, they invited me. Uh, I've I really love traveling, and I fully blame the Vienna trip for my travel bug. So thank you for that. So since I there was another study abroad that I did um, in Westchester that was the 100th year anniversary of when the United States entered World War One. And I went to Germany, Belgium, France, and Luxembourg, and that was with the history department. Um, so those two trips combined really set me off on a path of doing all of my traveling. So outside of those, I went to Portugal again for those friends' wedding. So have I been to any other foreign country? Oh, I'm going to Japan in 2 months. Um, uh, what other fun things have I been doing? Um, I seasonally work at Bates Motel and Haunted Hayride. I've been doing that since my last year of college. So that's a fun fact. What else? Um, oh, another thing, if people get the travel bug, the United States is beautiful. Travel around the United States too. Foreign countries are amazing, but like America is incredible and very accessible. Some of these places you can just drive to. So that's another thing that I've been doing recently is traveling in the United States as well.
I have to follow up now because you said travel bug. So do you think that both those trips in college that really like create confidence or more interest or for your travels now since you graduated?
So definitely more interest, and in
Okay.
particular, Vienna is beautiful. Again, it's beautiful, it's easy to navigate, and there are places near Vienna that you can travel that are have a lot of like natural beauty. I went our free weekend. I spontaneously went with three other people to Fuschel am See, um, and I certainly hope that you have been there because it's unbelievable. And that initiated my love of traveling to view like nature and stuff like that. So that is where that desire has come from. And then also, I do a lot of solo travel, and I think the Vienna trip really built my confidence in that I can figure out how to do things, right? Because I came from Fuschel am See, which is, a 2.5 hour train ride, all the way back to Vienna, all the way back to our hostel by myself, and was able to navigate that. And so that, I think the confidence from those trips has been huge.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
that's really great to hear. Well, Abby, that was just so interesting to hear, and you're doing so well, and I'm just so proud of you for all of these amazing things you've achieved. And I know 6 years seems like a long time. I'm almost 50, so 6 years doesn't seem that long. But you've done so much in 6 years, so it must feel like a tremendously long time, and it's just so amazing to reconnect.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see you on campus again too. But it was really great also talking with you on Zoom today. So and thank you for sharing because it's really inspirational to hear what you did and to learn
Well,
how things work.
thank you. And hey, if you ever want me to come and talk to one of your classes, I live like 5 minutes away, so I will be there. Um, if you ask me to do it in German, it might take a little while, but
In English, but this is good to know. I might follow up, right? So,
please do.
so
Please do.
okay, okay.